Good morning, and welcome to Lowcountry Charity Spotlight, presented by Merchant Cooperative. This morning, Kristen Maurer is spotlighting one Lowcountry charity that is helping make our local community a better place. Merchant Cooperative, a full-service credit card processing company, is proud to sponsor Lowcountry Charity Spotlight each Saturday morning here on News Radio 94.3 WSC. And now your host, Kristen Maurer.
Good morning, Charleston. Happy December 27th. I hope you had a nice Christmas. I'm here with Tom Powers in studio with me this morning.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
How's your Christmas, Tom?
It was great. It was great.
Great.
Yep.
I also got the big cheese from the Merchant Co-op here today, Christian Maurer Jr. How are you this morning, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. And our guest, Tom, you want to introduce our guest?
Yeah, we got here today with us is Carol Sawicki.
Sawicki, yep, good
Sawicki, all right, awesome.
Rounds with Kanicki.
Sure does.
It does rhyme with Kanicki. She is the PhD, by the way. She's the executive director of the Dee Norton Lowcountry Children's Center.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's jump right into it. Carol, tell us about the Dee Norton Lowcountry Children's Center.
Thanks. Well, thanks for having me. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas to you.
So our program is a specialty child abuse center, and our mission is to keep children safe from abuse and trauma, and when either occurs, to work with our community to bring healing to these children and their families.
Okay.
We provide a range of services, assessments, evaluations, and treatment with children when there's a concern for abuse.
Who's Dee Norton?
Dee Norton was one of our founding directors. She was in the junior league, and really we started it in 1991. It was spearheaded by the junior league in response to children who'd been interviewed several times when there was a concern for abuse. And when children are interviewed several times, you guys might know, similarly, if adults are asked lots of questions about things that have happened, you might answer something about what you did this morning differently with your spouse than if there's a law enforcement officer asking what you did this morning. You're going to think about maybe if you ran a red light. But if your spouse is asking, it's a little different. So Dee Norton was one of the people that helped determine that we really needed a community agency in Charleston and the Lowcountry to help coordinate services when there's a concern.
When they say they interview the children, I mean, sort of give me, how does that, you interview a child? I mean, who does the interview? How does it start? How do you get the lead, I guess, that someone's being abused?
So we get the lead really from children and adults in their lives who recognize that something maybe is up. A lot of times it's the child saying that something happened. They might tell a teacher, they might tell their parent. We get referrals from teachers, parents, also the Department of Social Services and law enforcement. And when they're referred to us because there's a concern, we have specialized trained therapists who have been trained in what's called forensic interviewing techniques. And it's one of those things, this is somebody that's, a lot of times children have been told, don't talk to strangers. So when they come to our program and there's a person who's a stranger, they've been trained to help children feel at ease, to feel safe talking about what's happened, and to ask questions that aren't leading. So part of what we do is also rule out when abuse hasn't happened.
Oh, okay. That'd be just as important, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Have you seen that happen with somebody maybe trying to be vindictive or kids being...
Maybe a kid wants, maybe he thinks that's a way to, bring attention to him, Tom. Good point.
So that does happen now and again, but thankfully not that often. Yeah. More times it's that parents are concerned or teachers are concerned because of something the child did or said, and then they come in and it was just kind of a confusion. Usually the reason, when kids are being vindictive or something, they might say that something happened, but they don't have a lot of details with it. So if they have a lot of details about something that a child wouldn't know about, for example, sexual abuse, they don't know a lot about things like that.
And physical science, I'm sure they see that.
Exactly, physical science. We have on-site providers that are physicians from MUSC that do exams to check the physical signs too.
Coming up on our first break, let me ask you, do you guys have a website where people can go and see what's going on? We sure do, and we're actually revising our website this month. So our website's www.dnlcc.org. Okay, dnlcc.org. Well, that brings us up into our first break, so we'll come back in the second segment and get a little bit deeper into it.
You're listening to Lowcountry Charity Spotlight, presented by the Merchant Cooperative.
Monday morning feels so bad.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm here with Carol Sawicki. Where are you going New Year's?
New Year's, good question.
It's in a couple days.
I know it.
Watch the ball come down.
I'm hoping to stay awake to watch the ball come down. I haven't always been the best with my New Year's plans, but my husband and I are going to stay here in Charleston for New Year's. Yep.
Well,
yeah, I'm doing the Folly Beach thing, live out on Folly Beach. So instead of the ball drop, they do the flip-flop drop out there.
Why don't you run for mayor there, Tom? But you're the king there. You don't want the mayor would be a step down from your position at Folly Beach, wouldn't it?
I'd rather be the Wizard of Oz pulling the strings in the background.
Pay no attention to the man behind the Folly Beach curtain.
Yeah.
Well, Carol, Tom, you got to. We're in break. We were kicking it around. Tom, you want to lead in?
Well, yeah. With what you were describing, it sounds like I think a lot of people think that some of these functions are performed by government entities like DSS, but you guys are not that. You guys are actually a charitable organization that's augmenting and helping out. And what are you guys? Well, first of all, I mean, the Charity Spotlight show here, what we try to do is really educate the public about charities in the area here and show them what's going on different. And Christian says it all the time. Even though you're a nonprofit business, that doesn't mean that you guys don't have bills to pay,
right.
too. So, we're really here to show what this charity's doing and hopefully help motivate people to get involved.
Yeah, send money, volunteer.
That's great. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. So what is, I think that'd be a good thing to go on next. What's the difference between you guys and DSS?
So it's a really great question, and one that even comes up sometimes with families because we work really closely with DSS. Mm-hmm. So when somebody in the community is concerned that a child's experienced abuse, they might make a report, like mandated reporters will call the Department of Social Services. And part of what they are supposed to do at DSS is to coordinate with law enforcement so that children aren't interviewed multiple times. And really what we do as a nonprofit agency in the community is help with that coordination. So our interviewers are the ones that do that forensic interview. And DSS and law enforcement can come to our agency and watch it live so that they can see what's going on and coordinate their investigation so they don't have to duplicate efforts. And then we staff cases weekly with all of our partner agencies, which include DSS, law enforcement, Department of Mental Health, and over 30 partner agencies in the Charleston and Berkeley County communities to try and help reduce duplication of services. So a big part of what we do is both provide services, those interviews and therapy, but work with those other agencies to help them get their job done.
Oh, that's great. So, I mean, it's I always love to see when the community comes together to help solve some of these problems instead of creating yet another government situation.
Right.
Yeah.
And our model is actually a national model called Children's Advocacy Centers. So it's one that has been, it's been working in our community since 1991. And we were one of the first children's advocacy centers in the country. But now there's over 700 across the United States doing similar things to try and coordinate services.
Wow. What's your territory as far as, you say there's 700 of them. I mean, geographically, is there a territory? And how many kids, let's say in a given year or month that you help?
Great question. So in South Carolina, there are 17 children's advocacy centers.
Wow.
And it's by judicial circuit. So our primary service area is Charleston and Berkeley County. And we serve, for those forensic interviews, we provide over 1,300 a year.
Wow.
Yeah. And we see about 1,500 children a year counting the interviews and kids who come to our center for therapy.
It's sort of sad that you have to see that many kids.
It is, but I also,
But it's good.
It's good. And our place is a place that's not, if you guys were to come in for a tour, our place is child friendly. We have lots of toys and games in the waiting room. So when you come in, the kids are smiling. It's a place where there's hope and they know that they can receive services that were developed just for them to help them, if they are having symptoms, to get better.
Is there, what's the typical, I'm sure all the cases aren't the same, but there's got to be a large percentage. What's the typical child go through before they get to you?
Thankfully,
you mean in terms of how many people they've talked to?
What's the process? I guess what you're asking, right?
Yeah, what happened? Why is the type of abuse that kids go through?
Okay, so for us, the most common is either witnessing domestic violence between your parents. That's about 25%, and experiencing physical abuse.
So the kid's getting hit.
Getting hit, but more than just getting hit and it either breaking a bone or causing a cut. something where it's causing an injury.
Is that someone usually in the household, Carol?
Usually, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the next one's sexual abuse, which again is usually someone that they know. Over 90% of the time, kids are sexually abused by somebody they know.
How does the process work with, like, let's just say that you're a concerned person that might think something like this is happening to a child?
Yeah, good question, Tom. How do you?
Yeah,
how do you help?
what's that person? I'd imagine too that there's, no matter how nice of a person you might be, you still have some subconscious thing like, I don't want to get involved in something. I don't want to. It's like you raise your hand, now you got to commit yourself to this big process of turning somebody in. What is that? How does that work?
Right. I think that happens a lot too, that people are a little bit worried, but have that fear of, oh, this isn't my place to intervene.
Right.
One of the things that we're a resource that if somebody's concerned, they can call us and ask what that process might be. Ask what might happen if they called social services. Social services is going to a statewide hotline number where any concerned parent can call. And I know that's something that they're planning to roll out in March for our region. But it is something, if that concerned parent did call the Department of Social Services, they're going to send somebody just to see if the child's safe or whether they've been injured. And then they call us. So the child and their parent would come to our center. They'd meet with a family advocate who tries to figure out if there are needs in the family. And they'd have an interview that's non-leading again by one of our trained therapists who can try and evaluate whether or not something happened.
So as a person, and I think there's abuse, I'd like to cover a few questions here. What constitutes physical abuse? So, you know what I mean? What is that? A little pat on the butt to, you know what I mean? A lot of people may not know what the definition of that is.
Yeah.
Especially this day and age, it's a little different than when we grew up.
Yeah, when I grew up, it was,
It was a lot more common.
Different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things. It's been in the news a fair amount lately because, it's kind of dependent on what's acceptable at the time. So every state defines physical abuse differently in terms of what level of injury is, it was where they draw that line. And physical discipline using spankings, most parents actually use spanking, and it doesn't fall into physical abuse. But where it's considered physical abuse is where it is then leaving multiple bruises.
Like Adrian Peterson, that football star with that, they showed the kid's leg. Geez, oh man.
Right. Well, and that's one of those things where people still say, but that happened to me. How could that be physical abuse? So everybody kind of has a line where they draw it. And then the state has to decide where it's considered breaking the law because they're calling it physical abuse.
And it's how you were raised too.
It definitely.
I mean, if you got raised, if you said something or did something wrong and you were used to, someone hauling off and whacking you in the face, wouldn't seem unusual to see somebody else do that. So
Right. And really where we would wind up most of the time calling it physical abuse is if it's leaving some sort of injury, that's where it's crossing the line. And I've worked with lots of parents who've engaged in what was wound up called physical abuse, who maybe just didn't know anything different and didn't intend to injure their child. But once they've learned something that's maybe not physical discipline that they can use and they see that it works, that really have said, wow, I just didn't realize I could do something that would help my child to behave.
So you guys are providing services like that too, a little bit more, some guidance type service.
Once we've decided or help to answer the question of what's happened and whether something was abuse or not, then we do an assessment with the family to find out if they have needs for treatment. And we provide several evidence-based treatments on site.
How does domestic violence, Carol, affect these young kids? And what's the average age of these kids that you see?
So we serve children from real little ones, 2 years old, all the way up to 18, so the whole kind of range of ages. Most of the children we see are between 6 and 12. And witnessing domestic violence is one of those things that can cause a child to feel like their life's actually being threatened. If one of their caregivers is being very severely beaten and they're afraid their caregiver might die, their caregiver is the one who's pretty much providing their food, making sure that they're safe, having a house over their head. So kids can be afraid that they won't have anywhere to live or anyone to protect them.
Yeah, you never think, how does a kid see it through their eyes? We look as adults through our eyes, Tom and Christian, how you look at things, but how does that little person look at it? And
it's usually very different, from their little perspective of not knowing where they're going to get their next meal necessarily.
Yeah. Well, I imagine too, if there's never a break in that cycle, then, and sadly, it might be repeated one day.
Yep,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would imagine you probably see a lot of the cases where that's been systemic, generational type of. of things happening.
We do. And a lot of the times, we really try and we work a lot with caregivers. So we work with parents who maybe, have had this happen to try and help interrupt the cycle. Mm-hmm. So they're learning new ways to, to be with their spouse or their partner, new ways to parent their child so it doesn't continue.
Well, this has definitely opened my eyes that this function's being performed by a nonprofit charity. If you would have told me that without this being a nonprofit charity, that this is what happens in the normal case, the normal normal event, how it goes on.
Government money, any grants, anything like that you guys get?
We get, we have private foundation grants, and we just this past year got a grant from the Office of Justice Programs, a federal grant. About 65% of our funding is either from private foundations or federal grants.
Well, awesome, all the people that. What about, can you volunteer?
Absolutely. So we're always in need of volunteers, both in our lobby when we're working with caregivers. The children, it's helpful to have the children not right there when you're talking with the parent all the time. So we have them in our lobby, and we have volunteers in the lobby. We're always needing folks in the lobby. We also have several events. Private donations and events are about a quarter of our budget.
Where are you physically located? You say lobby.
Oh, good question.
Yeah.
1061 King Street.
Okay.
So Upper King, kind of next to the Food Lion that's up there.
Mm-hmm. Tom spends a lot of time on King Street.
What events do you have coming up?
So we have our dinner auction, Fleet Landing, which is on February 5th, 2015.
Fleet Landing, cool place.
Yeah, it's a great place.
That's fun.
Yeah,
nice
this will be our
there.
15th year there doing this dinner auction.
Wow.
Oh,
So
wow.
we really appreciate their generosity having us there.
Are tickets available now?
They are available. They should be available on our website as well.
Okay.
That website, again, just for everybody out there, that's dnlcc.org. And so when it's an auction dinner like that, what is it, like auction and artwork, stuff like that?
Artwork, we get donations from lots of different places. There's trips, there's various different things that you can buy. We had a stand-up paddleboard last year. So we have a silent auction and then also a live auction.
Oh,
Carol, let me ask you this. All these kids that get abused, do they all need therapy?
They don't actually all need therapy. So, we know a lot that children can actually go through something that's really stressful or potentially traumatic, but not have symptoms. So only about half of the children that experience abuse, even if it's really severe, wind up needing some form of treatment, which is why we do an assessment with them to try and see what symptoms or what problems they might be having, and then connect them with a treatment that's proven to work. But it's pretty amazing to see how kids, especially when they have a supportive parent, can really do well even when something terrible's happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's really interesting to me. I mean, I would have thought that this whole part of the process was something DSS was doing. And in fact, it's being augmented by this charity. How long has the charity been active here in the area? You said 1991.
1991 is when we opened our doors.
Wow.
Yeah.
Carol,
23
what
years.
does it cost a family to come in and get help?
So it actually doesn't cost the family anything.
Right.
We don't bill children or their families for services. The average cost of services to us is $1,400 per child.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's a big need for help there too. I mean,
Okay, so you guys
Absolutely.
pay the bill for all the people that are helping. Do I got it right?
So we do, and that's definitely through the support of our community, through donations,
Gotcha.
through grants. We receive those things to cover the services for all the children and families we see.
Well, I'd say that's a strong motivator for anyone out there that might see the need to help donate to a charity like this. I mean, $1,400 a child, and you're serving 1,300 children a year. That's a
Right.
big operation.
That's a big number. That gives out a lot of big help, so people have to donate. A lot of
Yeah.
rich people in Charleston, get your checkbooks out.
We definitely appreciate our supporters. We would not be here if it wasn't for the support of the
What's your
Lowcountry
degree in? I
community.
see you have a PhD.
It's in clinical psychology. I'm a psychologist.
Well, you got to spend time with Tom. Talk to him. Tom.
Work mostly with kids.
Well, that can
it's-
work too.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Well, guys, we're coming up on another break. Time flies when you're having fun. And so, again, we're here with Carol Sawicki, PhD, the executive director of the Dee Norton Lowcountry Children's Center. And you can check their website out at dnlcc.org. What's the phone number there, Carol?
It's 723-3600.
As for you?
They can ask for me. They can ask questions. We'll direct them to whoever is the right person to talk to.
Awesome.
Great. You're listening to Lowcountry Charity Spotlight, presented by the Merchant Cooperative. Big New Year's Eve party coming up at Carol Sawicki's house. What a great guest she is, and the great work that they do. It's a thankless job, and you're so important to this community.
Well, thank you so much.
People important to the community. Who do you want to thank?
So I wish I could name everyone, that supports our program, but we definitely have some really key partners in the community. Anchor Sign has been a consistent supporter, Hill Construction, Motley Rice, the Intertech Group. Joe and Lisa Rice have been longtime supporters and friends of the program. And then I also just want to recognize all of our board. They're listed on our website, who we have a fantastic board that is just so committed to children and families and to the success of our program. So they're fantastic to work with. And then, of course, our staff. We provide lots of services to children and families, and the staff's so committed and compassionate with the families. So
how many people is on your staff?
We have we have 28 staff members, but 4 of them are part-time.
Wow.
And then
28, that's a lot of people helping.
That's a big operation. Yeah.
That's great.
Plus volunteers?
Plus volunteers, which includes student interns. We have student interns from the local schools and also from USC. And then the folks who are co-located from the Medical University of South Carolina, they're on site, but not on our staff.
Wow, so this really is an integrated charity into the community. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think more people need to be aware of that. So the Lowcountry Children's Center on King Street. You guys, how long have you been involved with it? How'd you get your feet into this organization?
So I've been the executive director since January of last year. So it'll be a year coming up in a couple weeks. And my background's in psychology, like we talked about. And most recently, I was the mental health director at a similar style children's advocacy center in Norfolk, Virginia. But really came to do this work. I was a resident assistant in college at the University of Florida. Mm-hmm. And we did all of this programming. The Gators. Yeah. We're having a tough couple of years.
Well, I'm a Buckeye fan, so.
Oh, so you guys took our coach. But we would do all of this programming for sexual assault prevention, and there was a really high-profile sexual assault that happened while I was a resident assistant. And my residents kept telling me that these programs just didn't work. They were about strangers, and most sexual assaults are by somebody that they know. So I went into the field to try and help prevent sexual assault and then any negative consequences of it. And I learned that most women who were sexually assaulted in college have actually already been abused as a child. So really started focusing on working with children and families to try and help stop that cycle.
That's great. So you got a real passion.
What's your greatest needs right now? If you had a magic wand and you can say, okay, I want this to happen, what would it be for this organization?
So for our organization, I'd really love to have the capacity to serve all of the children that really need us. Estimates of the amount of child abuse that actually happens in Charleston and Berkeley counties suggest that it's 14,000 children that are abused every year.
14,000? Wow.
14,000.
And you're servicing, I forgot.
1,350.
10%?
Yeah. So part of that is really because only one out of 10 children tells about their abuse while they're children. They do studies with adults, and they say that they were abused as a child, but they never told anyone.
Awareness.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if I had a magic wand, I would increase our awareness. We do a lot of training with teachers to help them identify kids who might be abused. Mm-hmm. And so I'd really have the resources and know those questions to try and help identify kids and keep them safe.
Well, I would say that anyone listening to this that is moved by that message to absolutely go to their website, dnlcc.org. It's the Dee Norton Lowcountry Children's Center, so the abbreviation for that. And check them out. I'm sure they can find all your other contact information there if they have any kind of passion towards it, want to pass this on to a teacher friend. Everybody knows Absolutely. A teacher, a parent, or somebody that's in a role like that. And, hey, what a great guest. We're glad you came on the show, and wish the best in the new year for your charity.
Thanks so much. Wish you
Carol,
both the best too. Best too.
Thanks a lot. You're great, and your organization and all the people that you mentioned. I want to wish them the best too.
Thank you so much.
We'd like to get involved too. I'll go to the tickets or something. We'd
That'd
be
be
really
great.
interested in that to contribute and like to meet your people.
That would be awesome. Thanks.
Okay, everybody have a great New Year. Remember, be at Carol's house. What time are the nachos coming out? 8 o'clock, something like that?
Somewhere around there.
All right. You're listening to Lowcountry Charity Spotlight, presented by the Merchant Cooperative.
Lowcountry Charity Spotlight is presented each week by Merchant Cooperative, a full-service credit card processing company that provides payment processing services to businesses all over the Lowcountry. Please help and support this morning's charity so they can continue their good works. Thank you for listening, and be sure to join us each Saturday morning at 7:30 here at News Radio 94.3 WSC.